Okay, welcome to a Wednesday evening in Detroit in black and white. We've got a few of the regulars who are missing in action. Adolph, Vanessa, and Jim Nardoni are not here tonight. And so brought on some extra folks here. We've got my good buddy Ira Todd, retired Detroit police investigator. We've got Norbert Grundy, another retired Detroit police officer. And we've got Lonnie Wade, another retired police officer. And tonight we're gonna be talking about a few different subjects. First, I want to real quickly talk about Mary Sheffield's getting tickets and free tickets to concerts. And the other thing, we're going to talk about Jimmy Kimmel, but then we're also going to talk about policing and different tactics and what's going on in the crime world and what are some of the solutions here. So welcome, guys. Welcome, everybody, tonight. Welcome, Norbert. Welcome, Lonnie.
Thank you, sir.
Yep, welcome. So tonight, we've got a little bit of background noise. I'm not sure where it's coming from, but let me see here. Anyways, I want to talk about, first of all, and you can all jump in here, Mary Sheffield. ML Elric reported in the Detroit Free Press that she received from Comerica, the bank, 2 floor tickets and 4 suite tickets to the Jeezy concert over at the Fox Theater. And, the value of that is probably, I'm guessing, $2,000-$3,000. And so I think the city regulations say that you're supposed to report that type of stuff. She says the corporate counsel said that she's done nothing wrong. My feeling is, even if there should be some ethics there that you report gifts. I mean, look, somebody takes you out for a sandwich or whatever, big deal. But when people start giving you things of true value, and it doesn't matter if they have something pending before you, Comerica, they're a bank, they're a business. They have, it always helps to have politicians giving them a little something. I think the government should be as transparent as possible, and it looks a little sleazy to me. Ira, you got any?
I feel like it's a little bit business as usual. I think politicians been doing it forever. You got Trump getting this big old plane from the Saudis. I think it's business as usual. I think it's it may not look good, but I think it's something's been going on for quite some time.
And Norbert, you have any opinions on that?
Well, no, I agree with Ira. I mean, it's business as usual. I don't know if that's it's acceptable in our world because that's what we're used to. It's really something that could be going on, should be happening.
Okay, Norbert, we're having a little hard time hearing you. Is there a way you can talk closer to the?
Let me try. Can you hear me now?
A little better. That's better. Yeah, a little better. Go ahead.
It's more business as usual. I'm not sure if it's something. We accept it because that's what we know. And that's what we've known. We've seen it over the years, politician after politician. Back when Coleman Young used to make his executives buy tickets to his fundraiser. So is that ethical? I don't know. It's a question that I think is out there.
Right. Lonnie, you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just think it's like they said, it's kind of business as usual, but it is an ethics problem. I mean,
when we talk about business,
I think she probably should have reported it or said something, but it goes on.
Yeah, well, that kind of bothers me. I think that, and then we're going to get into crime and the same thing, where it seems like a lot of times people say, well, there's gunfire on a block all the time, but hey, that's the city. That's the way it goes. I think we have tolerance for some of the bullshit in our lives, and I think it's really, I think it's important. I know we say it's business as usual, but what is that? Should we have business as usual? It bothers me. There's nepotism on city council. There's there's these kinds of things where it's like, I want to know what my politicians, who's in their pocket, who has them in their pocket when they're
Right.
voting. I want to know, like, why did they vote for Comerica to do this or that? Aha, Comerica's been given those great tickets. I mean, two floor tickets, I can't imagine. It's got to be at least $1,000 each. I'm guessing, and maybe minimum 500 each. And then suite tickets, I mean, that's another each. We're talking about 6 tickets, so we're really talking maybe $3,000-4,000 in value of something. I'm gonna, if somebody keeps giving me stuff and then they come and say, "Hey, we need your vote," you're gonna have a hard time saying no. Screw you. And they'll say, "Hey, you want to see Jeezy again with all your buddies?" But anyway, so I just wanted to get that out of the way. The other thing we're talking, I just wanted, Ira and I were talking about this a little bit, was about Jimmy Kimmel and what's happened and being in the media, editor of Deadline Detroit and working for the Washington Post previously and the Detroit News, I'm really, the First Amendment is really dear to my heart, and the idea that the FCC can tell the White House, "Hey, you better do," the White FCC will tell ABC, "You better do something about this Kimmel guy. He's getting under the skin," and so somebody's making noise here. Let's see if we can mute that. So let's, Teresa, you want to play the Jimmy Kimmel did return, which I saw as a major victory for the First Amendment, whether you like him or not, whether you like Trump, whether you don't like Trump. I mean, even Senator Ted Cruz was questioning the FCC putting pressure on that. And, there's just one little thing. In 1939, there's been an article circulating in which I checked was the real deal. 1939, out of Berlin, Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's propaganda minister, announced that they had terminated the careers of 5 actors who had criticized the Nazi regime, and they got rid of them. And we got to be careful. That's a slippery slope. But Teresa, you want to play that?
I want to make something clear because it's important to me as a human, and that is, you understand that it was never my intention to make light of the murder of a young man. I don't think there's anything funny about it, nor was it my intention to blame any specific group for the actions of what it was obviously a deeply disturbed individual. That was really the opposite of the point I was trying to make, but I understand that to some that felt either ill-timed or unclear, or maybe both. And for those who think I did point a finger, I get why you're upset. If the situation was reversed, there's a good chance I'd have felt the same way.
He also praised Kirk's widow during this past weekend's memorial for her husband.
On Sunday, Erica Kirk forgave the man who shot her husband. She forgave him. That is an example we should follow.
But Kimmel was also back telling jokes, taking a jab at President Trump.
You almost have to feel sorry for him. He did his best to cancel me. Instead, he forced millions of people to watch the show. That backfired bigly.
After the taping of the show, President Trump weighing in overnight, blasting ABC's decision to put Kimmel back on the air.
All right. So I guess one of the questions is, have you guys been following this? And it doesn't matter to you. I mean, me as a journalist, I've been, and I'm a Kimmel fan as well. I've been following it very closely, but I wonder, have you guys followed it? And do you see any importance to this? Lonnie.
Yeah, I followed it, but I thought that was kind of pathetic that the government will try to interfere with free speech and all that. I just, it's just a bad situation when government can. I mean, we are a free society and we free speech and the whole 9 yards. So it's just not good for government to be involved in that. I mean, he's a comedian and come on. you be able to say whatever you want to say. I didn't really feel anything that he said that was derogatory or anything like that. But
Ira? Okay, can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Better?
Uh, a little bit.
A little bit better? It's all the way up.
Yeah. All right.
Now?
Yeah. All right. Yep.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. You know, I think we're starting to normalize the way politics is today. And I think it started at the top, and it started some years ago when Trump came in office. You know, we talk about Mary Sheffield, we talk about Donald Trump, and we talk about all these politicians who are starting to rule with an iron fist. And I think they're starting to do whatever they want to do. You know, they're making up new rules as they go. So I think it's like, here it is, we got Kimmel defending something that he said about a racist, about something that we should be talking more about, that racist and the things that he said, opposed to the jokes that Kimball made, you know, just trying to deal with some of this stuff that we're dealing with. But I think they're deflecting all this different things that's going on with politics right now. They're deflecting it by talking about other issues instead of talking about the real issues. The real issue is we had a racist guy that talked about women, talked about blacks, talked about Jews, talked about everything he could talk about under the sun. And yet you have some comedian that voiced his opinion about it, and all of a sudden they deflect to that. And I think that's what the problem is. I think these smoke screens are being thrown up. You know, even with Sheffield, okay, all of a sudden she's taking these gifts and things like that. This stuff has been going on forever. And I think Trump is bringing it to the forefront, but I think we're normalizing it too, but we also forgetting what the real picture around this thing is. Here it is, we have this racist 31-year-old man who really, I mean, uneducated, he's very articulate and things like that, but somebody give him a few $1 million to build this platform so that he can say all these racist things. And then, you know, what they said, you know, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. And then all of a sudden, if somebody says something like that, oh my God, you're so insensitive. But what about it? What about all the stuff that he was saying that was so insensitive? So I think we're starting to twist all these things up where, you know, the norm is not the norm anymore. And we created a new norm. But I think the real problem is we really need to look at what's going on in our society, what some can say opposed to what others can say, or what some can do opposed to what others can do. That's just my opinion on that.
And Norbert, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I would first start off by saying, you know, we're protected by our constitutional rights. Freedom of speech is a constitutional right. However, in most cases, freedom of speech will have consequences. And that's what we have to deal with when we think about it. Do I think Jimmy Kimmel's statement was wrong? No, I don't. I don't think he said anything offensive. I think he was addressing the matter. But the problem I have in looking at this whole thing is that when you have a president that involves himself in something like this, I don't think there's ever been a president that I'm aware of that will involve himself in something like this. Now, I understand he was a Trump supporter, and you know he wants to show his constituents that, hey, you know, this is what I do. But I think it's wrong, and he's made very racist statements throughout his whole campaign, going back to his first campaign. But you know, it's a shame, and it's really a shame. But again, you know, I believe he's also making this the norm of politics at this point. And that's just not good. That's not a good look for America. That's not a good look for the people of America. And it's sad. It's really sad.
And Ted Cruz coming on board saying, oh, he's so appalled about this and appalled about this. Ted Cruz started some of this hate baiting and violence talk, you know, down the line. They all are, they flipping the switch. And I think it's time for us to call them all out, you know.
Yeah, you know, I think it's interesting that after, you know, Trump was so outraged after Jimmy Kimmel went on the air that he put out a post on his True Social saying, I can't believe ABC brought him back, the low rating, unfunny guy. And then he threatened ABC and he said, you know, we got $16 million. I mean, he sued ABC when George Stephanopoulos referred to him as said he'd been convicted of rape when he was convicted civilly of sexual assault. And the judge even said at some point, he said, "Look, it's by by the talk that we goes, rape is sort of has become interchangeable with sexual assault and stuff like that. The allegation was rape. They found that he had sexually assaulted her. And I can tell you from working at the Washington Post and the Detroit News, I've had a lot of stories that go through the lawyer before they went into publication. We went over with a fine tooth comb every word, made sure this or that. And I can tell you, there's no way in hell that that was a valid case. But ABC was worried about some repercussions, so they gave Trump $16 million uh, and paid him off. So now he refers to that again. He says, "We got $16 million last time. Let's see what we can get from him this time." And like you say, I mean, I think late night comedy has changed a little bit. It's become a lot more political. I mean, David Letterman, Jay Leno, Johnny Carson, they made jokes about the president all the time, but it's, nowadays it's a lot more every night. I mean, Stephen Colbert every night, Seth Meyers every night, Jimmy Kimmel makes a crack, Jimmy Fallon makes a crack. It's a little bit more political, but so what? It's comedy, it's entertainment, and when the president of the U.S. starts to weigh in on that, and Eric Brown says, Disney lost money, and they did. I canceled my Hulu Disney. I didn't even know that I had Disney. When I called, they said, "Oh, we're going to cancel your Disney too." And I told them, I said, "Let them know it's because of Jimmy Kimmel." And I think a lot of people did that, and it made an impact. And look, no matter what, like I say, when Ted Cruz is out there, of all guys, I mean, he's a pretty conservative guy. When he's criticizing the FCC and essentially Trump for going after them for free speech, it's dangerous. And sort of the irony is that the guy who was assassinated, he was assassinated for free speech, and people are saying how valuable, how holy that is. That what Charlie Kirk said, he had the right to say, and I agree. He has the right to say it. He had the right to get killed, but Kimmel also has the right, particularly as a comedian. I mean, he's making jokes. Our comedians are more satirists now on the late night shows. So I think it's kind of crazy.
Have some sort of rules and regulations. We got to go back to some basics, because you can't yell, fire in a crowded theater. So,
Right.
We have to go back to some of the basics and thinking about, look, what we need to do, or maybe redefine the law or something like that. But I just, if you really look at everything, it's being twisted around with these politicians and everything else. And the real deal is these guys are manipulating the media. They're manipulating people's minds. They say what they say in one breath and they change in another breath. It's
Right.
like you can't find any truth out here anymore. And then with the $16 million lawsuit, a lot of these companies think it's cheaper just to go ahead and settle instead of let this thing draw out, and it could be $25 million by the time, plus whatever legal offense fees or whatever it might cost them. So
Right.
a lot of times people bail out because it was a nuisance suit or whatever. And Trump is notorious for just suing everybody and just tying up the system. And guess who's paying for all of this? The taxpayers. We paying for all these lawyers. We paying for all these settlements. And especially the political lawsuits that he's going through and everything, we're paying for all that stuff. All
Right.
these lawyers are getting rich. Think about all the FBI agents that he fired, unjustly, without any type of reason or what have you, that's coming back with lawsuits. Think about, who's paying for that? We're going to pay for their defense. We're going to pay for all of this stuff.
Right. So let me let's get into. We've got three experts in law enforcement here, guys who have had a lot of experience. I want to go around before when we talk about policing today as opposed to policing in the past. We talk about crime. We talk about community relations with the police department. And I know there's always a lot going on through Black Lives Matters, defund the police. We've had the Trump talk about law and order, and then we had January 6th, where a lot of people attacked police officers at the Capitol, and then they were later pardoned or their sentences were commuted or whatever. So I want to go around the horn real quick and just really briefly tell our viewers a little bit about your background. Let's start with Ira. Tell your background at DPD, what was going on.
Well, you had about 35 years with DPD. Prior to that, I was with Michigan State Police. And I worked units like, I met Lonnie and G-Man at, at Gang Squad. I worked the Violent Crime Task Force for multiple years and, Federal Task Force for the majority of my career.
Okay. Lonnie, you want to tell us a little bit about your in a thumbnail sketch, what your career was about at DPD?
Yeah, I started, like I said, I came on in the 70s, so during the Coleman and Young administration. And so I've worked several precincts and bureaus and like Gang Squad, TSS.
Okay.
And so, I've been around the whole city probably.
Ah, okay. And Norbert, do they call you G-Man or do you go by Norbert?
To my colleague,
G-Man.
definitely G-Man. But Norbert's fine too. I answer to him. But I started my career at DPD in November 1985. I started out as a latent print technician out of the police academy. Was really bored with that and didn't come on the job for that, but I had an uncle per se in the furniture business at that time, so that's where I landed. And so I was there probably a few months, and I ended up at the 10th precinct, which at the time was probably one of the worst precincts in the whole city of Detroit.
Hey, where was it? Where is the 10th precinct?
The 10th precinct is in Livernois and Elmhurst.
Okay.
Detroit, the west side of the city. It kind of bordered like Linwood, Davidson, Dexter, Boston, Chicago, in that area up to the lines. But so I worked there for about 4 or 5 months, and then I met Ira and Lonnie Wade. I went to the Gang Squad, and I met Ira and Lonnie Wade. So I think I worked there till 1987, maybe somewhere in there. Might have been a little longer, but I left Gang Squad and I went to the Executive Protection Unit where I was assigned to as a Executive Protection Officer for the mayor of the city of Detroit, who at the time was in Zark.
Okay. Somebody is saying, Willis Martin says we're having difficulty to hear the gentleman. Is there any way you could adjust, get closer to the microphone, or is there something you can do to improve your?
I probably can't get any closer to the microphone because it's right in front of me.
Okay.
I apologize.
All right. Okay. Well, I guess we'll try the best. So, you guys all have a lot of experience, and I'm sure you've got a million stories, and I'm sure there's a few books in there that could be written about all your experience. Now, I want to talk about some of the police relationships in the community. And Lonnie, you agreed to talk about this, which I give you credit for. You had an incident. We're going to play a little video of this. And here, this is Lonnie. I think it was about 7 years ago. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay, hold on. We got to unmute you there. All right, go. Was that about 7 years ago that you had that incident?
Yeah, in 2017.
Okay, cool. So, all right. So I'm going to play this little video.
This happened in October of last year, clearly recorded by shoppers at the store, as you may recall. Jason Colthorpe here now with the news that he's not going to jail.
Yeah, and a lot of people surprised by this, considering Exhibit A was what you just saw, and that's what has a lot of people outraged today.
The Detroit police officer swinging this nightstick here will not do any jail time for it. After pleading no contest in February, Lonnie Wade was sentenced today to 3 years probation. He had been charged with assault with intent to do great bodily harm and felonious assault, and facing a total of 14 years in prison. The 65-year-old DPD officer was working his second job as security at the Meijer on 8 Mile October 10th when he asked David Bivens to see his receipt. After his girlfriend produced it, prosecutors say he tried to arrest Bivens for disorderly conduct, but there was no evidence.
All right. So Lonnie, that was obviously probably, I assume, a kind of a traumatic experience in your career. You were working an extra job over at Myers, over at 8 and Woodward, correct?
Yes, that's correct, sir.
And that all happened. I guess one of the questions is, was it reported? Obviously, was it reported properly in the media? Was it accurately reported? And what were you thinking when all that was going on? When first of all the incident happened, and
No, it really wasn't accurately reported in the media because actually the guy was shoplifting. He was. So, but that never came out. You know, and the the reason he was arrested wasn't really, shoplifting was part of it, but he there was a lot of things said prior to that. He was using profanity. I mean, people were going in and out of Myers, and you know what I'm saying, and they were wondering what was going on, and he had been told repeatedly, just to calm down, don't use profanity, and he continued. So,
well, let me ask you: could you have dealt with that in a different way, or do you feel like you dealt with it appropriately?
well, I felt at the time I dealt with it appropriately because normally he wouldn't have got locked. Normally we don't even lock them up for shoplifting.
Mm-hmm.
What they usually do, they confiscate the items,
Mm-hmm.
and they usually maybe give them a ticket or cite them into court or something like that, or maybe just tell them they can't come in the store no more.
And did you find something on him that
well, the problem was the clothes that he had in the basket. He did not go through the cashier. They were not bagged. None of them was in bags. He did not go through the cashier because I watched him. He came around and he took the basket right out the door with all the items in it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it was, it was actually not it was the security officer there that noticed it. And, so we did approach him at the same time. I guess the security guard, after he got real combative, the security guard, he left. He got scared and left.
Right. And so you ended up, Kim Worthy charged you criminally.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
I saw you got one of the best attorneys in the city. You got Steve Fishman.
One of the best. Yes.
Yeah, by far one of the best there. I think I always say if a judge gets in trouble, they're going to hire Steve Fishman. And so the question becomes, how did that impact you emotionally, and to see your name out there? And I assume people called you. I don't know if these two guys, if Ira and Norbert called you and said,
"Oh yeah, of course, yeah." All my former, colleagues called me, and so it was the only thing I didn't receive a call from was the security team at Myers. I was a little disappointed with that, but
were you done? Was that the end of your job at Myers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then did you stay on the department after that, or was that
a little while, and then I retired? Yes.
They retired. And so did you feel the department was supportive of you, or did you feel they kind of let you hang out there? Or?
Well, it was political. Yes, they kind of left me hanging out. The city, under the contract, I guess the city could not properly represent me because it was considered an off-duty police function.
Right. I got
even though it was sanctioned by the police department, approved by the police
department. It was sanctioned by the police department.
Was getting paid along with you getting paid for security.
Right.
I hate to jump in this, but I'm gonna tell you something. When I first saw that, I was outraged, and I'm gonna tell you the reason why I was outraged. from an investigator. Because from an investigator standpoint, first of all, Lonnie was investigating a misdemeanor, right? He was investigating a misdemeanor, and he had the right to stop this guy and question him on a misdemeanor. Okay, where it escalated to a felony is where what we call R&O, resist and obstruct. So when that guy didn't follow Lonnie's orders, didn't follow his instructions or whatever like that, he was resisting and he was obstructing an investigation. So it's at that time it's a felony. He had probable cause to arrest him on that felony at that time. Now, if he resists on that felony, you have the right to effect the arrest, whatever takes necessary to effect that arrest.
Right.
So I think it got blown out of proportion because of all the things that was going on in the media at that time and everything else. Right. But he had the right to approach him, to investigate him, and to detain him while he investigated him for that misdemeanor. Now, when he started saying, I'm not going to do what you tell me to do, police officers have the right to give you an order, and you have to obey that order. Now, it's not the time to do that out in the streets. You do that in the courtroom later on. If they do something wrong, go fight it in court. But when people don't understand, when you out there making split-second decisions and things like that, it escalated quick. Lonnie was fighting for his life at that time. This young boy was dragging this older man. I don't mean to offend you, Lonnie, but this older man that's working secondary. Well, he shouldn't be working secondary. He should be making enough money where he don't have to work secondary. But working secondary in some store, and then all of a sudden you subject yourself to that kind of criminal charge or whatever. I think it's ridiculous, and let's break. Don't back you up with it either.
Let's break the commercial. I'm going to ask Norbert. I'm also going to ask you guys about the secondary jobs that some of you guys took over time, and how that played in with the department. I know I go to Myers all the time. On Jefferson, there's usually an officer either in the lobby there or in a car in the parking lot. But anyways, let's break for a commercial, and we'll be right back. Talk more about this.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. Are you living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, or maybe you know someone who's in the same situation? The probate process may be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. We have several nonprofit partners who have free attorneys who can assist you. Contact our office, 313-224-5990, or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. Don't lose your family property. Some of these properties have been in the family for 4 or 5 generations. Contact us now. We're here to help.
Okay, we are back, and we were talking about Lonnie's incident over at Myers about 7 years ago. So I'm going to ask Norbert, and Norbert, I may ask you to just speak up a little louder since we're having a little microphone issue there. But did you have, what were you thinking at the time? You know Lonnie a long time, saw the videos. I'm sure people were talking about it. What was your read on it?
So hopefully this sounds better. Does this sound better?
Yeah.
Okay. So when I first saw it, I was out of town on a business trip, and I was getting these phone calls from other folks, and they were saying that the incident that occurred. And when I saw the video for the first time, I was saddened and I was upset that this occurred. And then when I found out that the department was not supporting him, even though this was a sanctioned event, and the union could not support him, I was upset. I was visibly upset, and I think I reached out to Lonnie and we talked for a little bit. But I think it was terrible because a lot of times it's the politics of the job that plays with people's lives. This man was obviously working secondary because he needed the money for whatever reason, doesn't even matter. But he had absolutely no support.
So, all right, we are going to move on here. I'm going to ask you guys, we've had, crime has been a focus of the Trump administration, and we're talking about the use of the National Guard. And I've always been, I'm not an advocate of the use of the National Guard, but I've always felt that crime in major cities, there's been too high level of tolerance for it. I covered in D.C., Detroit. I know in D.C. people would say, oh, every day there's gunfire on our block. That's the way it is. The question is, let's start with the National Guard issue, where Trump has deployed the National Guard in Washington, and there's a lot of controversy, and there's questions how effective that is. Do you think the National Guard would be any help here in Detroit, or is there a better way to deal? I mean, and one last thing I'll say is that a lot of times you'll hear the politicians say, we don't need any, we're doing fine, crime is down 30%. But to me, still having whatever, well over 100 homicides, you're having still stick-ups, you're having carjackings and stuff like that. It's like, I don't think that's the answer. The answer, I think but I'll ask you guys, as you guys are the experts here. Let's start, Ira, with the National Guard. We'll go around the horn here.
Had it been any other president or in any other circumstance than, Trump just flexing his muscles, I wouldn't have questioned it at all, because I used to work, federal task force, and I've learned a long time ago there's a lot of things going on in major cities that you don't know about. It could be terrorist cells out there. It could be a lot of things. And a lot of times we wouldn't tell you everything that's going on. You don't want people to panic. So sometimes deployment of, like task force, special agents out there. Like I said, we got federal officers out there. You have federal officers out there all the time. You just don't know it, because they're on task forces and things like that. It's multi-jurisdictional task forces in every city. So I think sometimes we question too much what law enforcement is doing, but I think we have the right to do that as well. But sometimes, had it been a different president, I might have said, hey, you never know. Maybe they're deploying this saying this for one reason, but they may be looking for terrorist cells. He may be deploying, saying I'm looking for immigrants or whatever like that. But what if there's some terrorist cells out there that they're trying to sneak up on or do some things like that? So I think a lot of times, I just think it's what's going on in the atmosphere right now. What's happening at the moment. And I think because Trump is using or abusing his power, I think that's what gives everybody a bad taste in their mouth. Had it been some other president, say Barack Obama, say, look here, we're going to deploy some National Guards out there because we're going to get a hold of our cities. And if he'd approach it a different way, we might not hear so much backlash. But everybody know the reason why he's doing it. And he's targeting Black cities, so we know what it's all about. And I think that's where the anger comes from.
And Norbert, what do you think about the National Guard being deployed in major cities?
Well, I echo Ira's thoughts 100%. I think this administration is looking for attaboys. I think this administration is overstepping their bounds pretty much, and forcing it on these cities without even speaking or having a conversation with the governor of these states or the police chiefs of these cities. I think it's ridiculous. I really think it's ridiculous, and I just think that again he's targeting Black and brown communities, and that's awful. I just think it's awful, and for him to come to the city of Detroit, that wouldn't be a good move for them, and right. because of the civil unrest that will happen as a result of this happening. So
let me ask you this: what is some people say, well, maybe we need more federal agents and task forces so we can have more resources and wiretap access and all that. Is that an approach that if you were the chief here in Detroit and the White House reached out and said, what do you need to fight crime? What more would you be asking for?
I would be asking for resources. What resources do we have available that we don't have right now? And again, what
comes to mind? What resources come to mind when you think you have any? I'm sorry.
Technology. That could be more resources within the federal branches of the government. And I would probably be better to speak to it on that level. But I think more task forces definitely could help with a focus, not just a blanket task force, but with the focus, have a definite focus, and police it from that perspective.
Right, Lonnie, what's your thought on the National Guard?
Well, I kind of disagree with my two co-workers. I'm supportive of National Guard. So, I mean, you look at Washington, Chicago, New York. I mean, why wouldn't you? It's obviously a city like Chicago cannot handle the crime that they have there. Because if they could have, they would have done it already, or they should have done it already. So any extra law enforcement, any extra help should be welcome. I see it that way.
But let me jump in on there because
go ahead.
I want to totally, me and Lonnie fight about this stuff all the time, But because look here, back in the 80s, that's exactly what they did with us. They already had gang squad around. We would call it the special crime section. So when stuff got crazy, when the crack epidemic was out there, we created crackdown wraparound. Remember that? Gang squad. And what they do, you deploy people in certain areas. You can't say this whole city is out of control because it's only certain areas. Certain precincts may have more crimes than other precincts. So you create special task force or special units and that address that problem. If you got a gang problem, you create a bigger gang unit and you attach it to the area where the problem is. But you just don't say, hey, the whole city is going crazy. And it's not like that because you can go over to Rosedale Park. You have maybe zero crime. Sherwood Forest, zero crime. But maybe go over in 210's area or the 10 Priest area or number 9 and it's going crazy. Back in the day, they would create, you remember the time in number 9, we had a Delta area where police uniform cops wouldn't go in there. Guess what they did? They deployed gang squad over. They said, go over there and take that area back. Take the gloves off and take that area back. Now, I know a lot of people may not want to hear this, but sometimes I remember the days where people respect the police and a little bit of fear is sometimes good because I'm trying to tell you, at some point, you just can't let criminals take over the city. So if somebody really want to address that problem, let's look at the problem where the problem is. You can't just blanket and say, hey, Detroit. It's certain areas. So you can deploy special officers, special trained officers, to do those kind of things. There's wiretaps that you use. When I worked the Federal Task Force, let me tell you something. Before we actually deployed into our area, we had intelligence on that area. We knew who all the bad guys were. We knew who was dealing the drugs, who was dealing the guns. We knew everything before we went into that area, and we addressed the people in that area. It's the same with home invasions. If you have a number of home invasions in the area, you find out it's 4 or 5 people doing all the home invasions in the area. Once you take out that little group, the crime goes down in the area. So it's like, I think it's crazy to say, well, look, Detroit Chicago is going wild. It's not all of Chicago. It's certain areas of Chicago that's not going wild. So when Trump does that, it's all racially motivated, and we know it's racially motivated.
Let me, Norbert, I'm going to ask you a question. Ira sort of touched on that a little bit. Do you feel like it's little groups of people who are committing a lot of the crimes, or is it a lot of people committing a lot of the crimes? Is it, if you target one small group that's sort of the career stick-up guys or carjackers, do you feel, what's your read on that in crime?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both, because as we know, they're copycats. Someone does a crime and then someone says, "Oh, I'm going to do it as well. I'm going to be a copycat." So I think it's a little bit of both. But there's certainly groups within the city in certain areas, only certain areas of the city, as I spoke to earlier. You won't see that in Sherwood Forest. You won't see that in University. You won't see that in Indian Village. I mean, there may be some elements of crime, mostly property crime, most likely. But for the most part, you won't really see that. But again, I think it's both, and I think there should be a focused attempt to try to narrow down what crimes are really being committed. And I'm assuming they're doing this. I'm not sure. and then take it from there. You know, create task forces, create like we had in the 80s. You know, we kind of ruled with an iron fist, but we were also fair. You know, we weren't unfair. We weren't like the old days of the Big Four. You know, it was nothing like that. But we were fair, but we were firm as well, and we meant exactly what we said, and we got the job done. Today's a lot different. The climate is different. The policing is different. The chiefs are different. The administration is different. You know, community policing came into play, and it just kind of took over. And the law enforcement end of it got soft. I'll use that term. It got soft. It got lax because the job became political. It wasn't about taking bad guys off the street. It became political. They all became politicians. You know, so when you look at it, you have to look at it through those lenses. And I believe that, you know, hopefully one day it'll come back to being exactly what it was before, because it did work.
Yeah. So let me ask you, and we're going to take a break, but we're going to come back, and I'd like you guys. When in DC, it seemed like they kept the same. They centralized homicide. They put it all in one group. Then they decentralized and they sent it to each district. You know, this group here, and they thought it was smarter that way. Then they centralized it again, figuring maybe one district is missing clues in another district. And it went back and forth. And it always seemed like they were trying to come up with new ideas, but they were the old ideas that they just sort of recycled. I want you guys to address it, but let's take a real quick commercial break, Teresa, and then we'll be right back.
Nearly 30,000 vacant lots all over the city of Detroit are for sale right now. That's right. Nearly 30,000 vacant lots are available now, starting at just $100. The lot next to your house or the lot down the street. Make it yours today in just a few simple clicks. Find out if it is available by visiting buildingdetroit.org. At the Detroit Land Bank Authority, side lots are just $100 and neighborhood lots sell for $250. You can apply and pay online today by visiting buildingdetroit.org. And if you don't see the lot you're looking for, call our offices. Our phone number is 313-974-6869. Again, that is 313-974-6869.
Okay, we are back. And so I want to ask you, I know since you guys started out, technology has just continued to advance in DNA and electronic surveillance and cameras everywhere. Social media is another tool that you guys have used. Are we seeing new ideas, or are we still just seeing the same old ideas recycled again? Anybody want to grab that one?
I think we're seeing new ideals, and the way that we're policing is differently now. Because before, say for instance, before cell phone technology came out, you know, now we can track anybody by their cell phones. You know, you can do what they call a tower dump. Say for instance, like the shooting with the the Kirk guy, Charles Kirk. You know, in that instance, they could have done a tower dump, and you can actually find in that little square area and say, hey, how many phones were there? How many people were there? You can identify everybody that was in that particular area just from a cell phone dump. And that started the investigation rolling too, if you have nothing else. You got cameras. People don't realize you can pull cameras from the neighbors' cameras, like, you know, the Ring camera.
Ring bells.
Buses have phone cameras on them now. You know, I remember this officer from Wayne State got shot. We started pulling cameras off buses. You know, you'd be surprised some of the things that you can do out there. Doing tower dumps, you know, geo-fencing was a big thing too, where you could take a certain area and you do a geo-fence line and you do a tower dump, and all of a sudden we got 30 or 40 people in this area. We know they are prime suspects because it had to come from somebody in this area, you know, at the time. So you do the process of elimination, and until you can eliminate that person, then you start to investigate that person further. But technology, I'm telling you, is helping us, but it hurt us at the same time because it slows up the process of investigation. Because you have to subpoena these companies. Hey, we want these records. Unless you have some sort of exigent circumstances, you don't get things right away. It takes 30, 60, 90 days just to get one phone record. And then you have to have some analysts go through there and so they can understand what they're looking at. So it's like technology helps, but it slows the process up.
Norbert, what's your thoughts on that?
Oh, I definitely agree, and I also think that a lot of the law enforcement is relying almost solely on technology. There's no mix. There's no old school investigations like it used to be, and I think the two coupled together actually works out very well because you got boots on the ground and you have the technology to work with you. One technology that came out, and I may miss its name, but anyway, it's the gunfire technology. They can basically narrow down in the area where shots are fired. That's very helpful. But it still goes back to good old fashioned law enforcement. You use the two together, and I think you'll get farther ahead and not just solely rely or mostly rely on technology.
Right, Lonnie. What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I'm all for technology, but like I agree with Ira, it helped and it hurt because right now, if you notice, there's only there's no proactive, there's only reactive police work being done. I mean, somebody commit a crime and they go after them. There's no preventing or anything like that anymore with the cameras and all that. So that kind of cut that out.
And do you feel like some of the investigators out there they don't work the streets as well as you guys did in the past, or do you still think they do it as well as you guys did it?
Well, yeah, I think we did it better because there was something about working the streets that you knew the players, you knew you knew where they were, and you knew where they you know what I'm saying? You knew, and most of them and Ira can tell you, most of them we knew by name, the major players.
And I want to jump on that because that's what Allan talked about when they start taking these units and dismantle these units. They put homicide in the precinct level, and they just start switching. Right, every chief want to have his own little ideal, but people don't realize it takes years to build relationships out there, not just with sources, with neighbors, with people out there that you can go talk to. It takes years to do those things. How we used to come up through the department, you go and you work like the scout car for a while. You get to know the neighborhood. Then all of a sudden they ask you if you want to come to these specialized units. Once you have these specialized units, let me tell you something. You remember little JoJo in the neighborhood used to steal cars or break in houses. Okay, now JoJo, as a juvenile, he get out of juvenile home so many times. He's going to escalate into something more. But guess what? Now you move, especially if you move through major crimes. It used to be a time when you work gang squad, you went from gang squad to maybe homicide to major crime mobile unit, but you stayed in major crimes because what happened is you develop this stuff over time. You start building a rapport with the criminals out there, the neighbors out there, the people out there, and you start learning things and you building up this experience. But this experience is really crucial because it's like you say, as you growing and getting all this experience and all this knowledge, you can start using it when you get up, into these major crimes. You started having people getting promoted who never worked in an investigative unit, and then they promote it and they stick them in an investigative unit. They didn't even have a clue of what's going on. And that's what happened with the department. It becomes political, and they start taking care of their friends and start doing this or relatives. And the next thing you know, the people that know how to do the job, they're sitting back somewhere else or being punished and pushed over here because they're going to stand up to a boss or something like that. But the ones with the knowledge are the ones that's being pushed to the back burner. And the ones who don't have a lot of knowledge, that's what you're seeing what's going on with the crime now. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to investigate their way out of a paper bag. But here it is, you running an investigative unit and never worked in investigation in your life. So I've seen it sometimes where a guy didn't even know how to type up a warrant, didn't know how to type up a search warrant, a cell phone warrant. They didn't have a clue, but they was running a unit with all these things were occurring. So,
and not only that, Ira,
sometimes
not only that, Ira, they frowned upon it when you brought it to them. They didn't want to even approve it. Asking you all kind of crazy questions like why, You don't know why? I mean, that's the question in my head. But one thing that they didn't have is what we had. We were boots on the ground. We knew the people in the neighborhoods. We talked to people. We shook people. And one of the things that we did really well, how we identified some of the major players in the city of Detroit, we were at the concerts. We were at the parties where they get dressed up. They're wearing their finest clothes. They want to be seen. Those are the people that you remember. Those are the people that you talk to. And you start connecting the dots. They don't do that anymore. I don't think they do it anymore anyway. I don't say it that way. I don't think they do it anymore. But that's how we were so successful.
Let me ask you this. Oh, go ahead, Lonnie. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just gonna make a point. I was just gonna say it's kind of like the police department throughout the country is like the generals don't run the in the army and the navy, the generals. It's the president and those guys, the politicians who run the situation, who have no real street knowledge at all. You see what I'm saying? So the police departments are set up like that. It's the politics in it. That's all.
Right. Let me ask you. I'm going to ask you guys a question, but I'm curious. Before there's a specific case that I want to ask you about, and then I'm going to ask you. It's election year for the mayor's race, and we're not hearing really a lot of ideas and stuff like that. So I'm going to ask you guys what you might say if you were advising some of the mayoral candidates. But first of all, I don't know if any. I know Ira did. The Samantha Wall case, the woman who was the president of the Detroit Synagogue, who was stabbed in Lafayette Park and found there. And I followed the case closely, and I reported on Deadline Detroit. And I'm wondering, they played some of the interrogation of these guys, and it seemed like there were some holes in the case that gave the defense an opportunity to raise doubts in people's minds. Did you guys follow it? And I'm curious what your thoughts were on that case. Ira, you want to?
Yeah. Well, I followed it closely, and I even talked to some of the investigators at the time, and I watched some of the interrogation. I think that case was really lost at the interrogation stage. And I'm not making fun or talking down about whoever's conducting that interrogation. Sometimes you have your good days, you have your bad days. But on high-profile cases like that, you have to kind of approach those very gently, and you have to take your time. And what I find sometimes, where some people go in there and think that somebody's going to confess to you within 2 hours, sometimes it takes 3 or 4 hours to build a rapport with that person, get that person to trust you. But a lot of times, if you get these slick criminals out here, they know the system. They've been in and out of the system. Half the time, it's just a chore to get them not to lawyer up so that you can talk to them. So, that comes with experience. That comes with even understanding that these people are human, and there's a human factor to all of this. And if you stop talking to people, communicating with people, treating people decently and things like that, you're not going to get anywhere with them. And you could just tell with that particular case, I really think that it was lost in the interrogation room, because I think at that point, if they would have really took their time and really took their time and talked to this guy, they could have investigated the girlfriend who I know that she had washed some of the bloody clothes or something like that. There are different things, but it's not before you approach the criminal. I know you want to hurry up and get that criminal off the streets and everything else. You got to build a case, and building the case is developing witnesses. You got to find these witnesses out here that really saw some things, that really going to tell you some truthful things. If you get some person coming here and say, well, all I saw this, you got to be able to discern if this person lying or if something's not right about that statement. So you have to spend time to dig a little deeper in things like that. I just think that sometimes when these high-profile cases go on, it's like all of a sudden you get something from the mayor's office. We used to call them APEs back in the day, acute political emergencies.
Right.
Anything came from the mayor's office. But what would happen sometimes, brass would start telling you what to do, and they don't, like I said, they don't have a clue about investigations. And investigations you have to have patience. You have to take them step by step. But you have to find these witnesses first so you can develop the evidence and understand what you have before you even go in that interrogation room with the suspect. because if he find out that you don't know certain things, they'll shut down on you sometimes. And I think that's what happened. I think they were, and I talked to some of the investigators on that case, and they said the biggest problem was the brass wouldn't let them do what they were expert in doing. They started telling them how to do the job. And that's not what you can do in an investigation. You have to let whoever that officer in charge of that case run that case. And you have to trust them to run that case. And for a high profile case, you put your best of the best on that case. I was very successful in getting these confessions from guys. A lot of guys, oh, what's this magic? What's this stuff you pulling out your butt and whatever like that? It wasn't. It was all about communicating with people. And before you communicated with that suspect, you had to go talk to other people, get critical information, get evidence that support this information. So when you go into that room, you know exactly what you're talking about and who you're dealing with. I think that case just was rushed. And from what I hear, there was a lot of bosses that caused, and I knew the task force that was working on it. These guys were skilled guys. That's what they were doing. They did tower dumps. They did camera dumps. They actually found this guy. They were able to find him, and they eliminated everybody they could until they could not eliminate him. And that's when he becomes a suspect. You know, people don't understand that. Our job is not to say, oh, you're a suspect and we're going to prove that you're the person that did it. No, you try to eliminate that until you cannot eliminate that person. And once you can eliminate him, wait a minute, he's a suspect. There's too much evidence supporting that this person might be that guy. Okay. So I just think it was like the brass it was a high profile case. The brass was trying to get it done quick. And then you got these guys who don't know what they're doing, start telling guys who do know what they're doing and ordering them to do certain things they don't want to do. And you screw up the whole case.
Right. Do you guys have any, before we get to the last question, we're going a little over time, but we're going to go over time if that's okay, Teresa. We're going to go a little bit over time here, but Norbert or Lonnie, do you have any opinion on that particular case? Or?
Well, I just thought it was poor investigative work. And I agree with Ira, because a lot of times, you know, these investigators are under pressure to close the case. You know what I'm saying? By the brass. Right. You know, especially if it's a high profile case. Right. So, you know, it's mistakes, sloppy work, all that goes along with that when you're rushing.
Yeah. And Norbert, you got any?
Well, you know, I didn't follow the case that closely, but I do know from what I read and what I saw that the case was not properly investigated. There's a process to being a good investigator, especially a good interviewer or interrogator. There's certainly a process and that you follow. And a lot of it is interview. You want to interview as many people as you can, get as much facts as you can that you can verify before you even sit down with that suspect, with that person, and you have a conversation. And it appears as though that didn't happen for whatever reason. Ira, and I trust Ira 100% that, you know, the brass probably got involved and steps were missed because they were under pressure. But sometimes you just can't close cases the way they want it done. They want it done tomorrow, and there's a whole process that's going to take some time. And it's unfortunate, but it happens. It happens. It happens more than we want it to happen.
Right. And I'm assuming all of you guys have had high-profile cases. What kind of, before we get to the last question, what kind of pressure it comes with high-profile cases? And is it ever we see TV where it says, you know, somebody says, look, the chief says, look, the mayor's leaning on me. We got to solve this case. We got to charge somebody already. Is that realistic, or did it never really happen that way?
I think it happened a little that way, but people don't realize, you know,
in
most cases that high profile, the task force that get assigned that case, those are real qualified people. You have like FBI, DEA, ATF, Detroit Police, State Police. You have a multitude of law enforcement agencies that come together. And they have the best of the best in there. And it's not really that hard all the time. But it's like when people get pressure, if you got the real guys there, the pressure is what you like. You enjoy that pressure because you can handle that pressure. You know, we used to go out there and we could solve cases in 48 hours. They say, hey, go get it done. You know, a cop gets shot, we want somebody before that cop get buried, if that cop get killed, before that cop get put in the ground, we better have somebody in custody. And you better make sure you have a good, solid case, not some BS. You know, in that particular case, remember there was another guy that came in and he confessed, and I didn't think they eliminated that guy properly. And if they did, they didn't articulate it in court. So they created their own reasonable doubt. And the defense attorneys, these defense attorneys are really good. If that would have been a Fishman, he'd have tore him up way before the other defense attorney would have done that. But defense attorneys look for those reasonable doubt things that go on in these cases. And they created their own reasonable doubt by not properly eliminating him or articulating why they're eliminating him. And yes, it might be all drawn out. You got to go all through the investigation, say, we know this guy didn't do it. Even though he said he confessed and did it, we know he didn't do it because X, Y, Z. Couldn't have did it because of this evidence, this evidence, this evidence. So we eliminated him. Let's move on for that. This guy here, we could not eliminate. And what happened now, it was too much reasonable doubt there. And I mean, I watched that case, and I'm telling you, I couldn't have convicted that guy either, even though I felt like he was the guy. But there was too much reasonable doubt there that was created, and I think it was created within the department. Okay.
Interesting. Okay, so the last question I'm going to ask you guys, like I said, it's election year. I feel like we're not hearing any new ideas from the candidates about crime. I mean, there are some are addressing like housing and jobs and poverty and stuff like that, which I think we can all agree contributes to crime in some way. But in terms of policing, we're not really hearing much. What's a message to Mary Sheffield and Reverend Kinlock about what the department could still be doing better or needs to do more of to lower the crime rate even more? Norbert, I'll start with you.
Well, I tell you from what I know from both camps, they have some seasoned law enforcement on their teams.
Oh yeah.
But I think again, for me, it's always boots on the ground. You know, you couple that with technology, and there is a community policing component of that. But I would leave that separate, but work in conjunction with your investigators, you know, your boots on the ground folks, and you know, your high profile units like homicide and things of that nature. But I think they have a lot of work ahead of them. I think they're doing a decent job today. I think they're doing a very decent job, but they've got a lot of work, and hopefully they'll continue to grow with the right folks on their team. Okay,
Lonnie, what's any words for the candidates?
Yes, I would definitely tell them to when they hire a new police chief or whatever they're going to do, they need to get somebody that knows what they're doing, basically, and you know, because you know there are people who want to invest in Detroit. They want to move in Detroit, and crime is a deterrence for that. So, with that being said, that's to me that's the only thing that's kind of holding Detroit back, the crime. You know, I mean, you know, every weekend there's 2 or 3 people shot or killed. That's just not good.
I'll ask you this, Todd Bettison, do you think he's doing a good job, or do you think they need a new chief?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if he could have done anything, he would have done it by now. Yeah. So yeah, I think they need to go with someone else. I know Todd, and he's a real nice guy, but I think they need to go with someone else.
Okay, Ira.
I think bottom line would be like what happened to me when I was a kid. I always know I wanted to be a cop since I was 9 years old. I think you need to start recruiting at a young age. You start making police officers what they really are. They're the good guys. And you start recruiting from kids from an elementary, because most kids, I want to be a cop, I want to be a fireman, I want to be this. Well, start recruiting early on. Start having a relationship with officers and the people in the neighborhood and things like that. And start recruiting from within. Start teaching kids, like, you know what? crime doesn't pay. You know, things like that. You want to grow up to be a law enforcement officer. You want to go do this. You want to go do that. Start, you know, making it what it is. Being the good guys. The good guys got to start being the good guys again. Start recruiting at a younger level and start recruiting from within your city. You know, people will stay in the city. They love the city. They'll work for the city, but recruit from within your city. They become a part of it. When I became a police officer, I knew guys in the street that were thugs and everything else. But guess what? I stayed out of that because I want to be like that cop that came to my school. I want to make sure I kept my nose clean and everything else, even though all the guys around me might have been doing some stuff. But there was a handful of us who wanted to be cops. And we started wanting to be cops at an early age. We didn't see them as the bad guys. We saw them as the good guys. We saw them as a way of getting out of the bad situation. And so I think it's like we got to start talking about law enforcement like what it really is. We are the good guys, and quit demonizing us and blaming us for everything that goes wrong. And I think once you bring people out of the neighborhood, they love where they come from. You know, I used to love going over the areas, and people they'd be so proud to see, oh, look at, he's a police officer. I knew when he was a little so-and-so. Hey, I know him personally. It's like James Craig. People used to love James Craig. You know why? Because he was in the neighborhood. He knew, oh, I know him personally. I know your chief personally. So we got to get back to where we the good guys. We the people that people like and want to be like.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Well, I think we need to have you all back again to talk more about it. I really appreciate it. Lonnie Wade, Norbert Grundy, and Ira Todd. Really appreciate you guys. And there's a lot more to talk about. I know you guys have a million stories to tell, and you guys collectively have a lot of expertise and insights in what's going on in crime in the past and currently and how that compares. So until Friday night, I want to thank all you guys. I want to thank everyone in all the viewers who are watching tonight, and we'll be back again, and we're going to have all these three guys back again. It's been great. So
thanks for having me.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Yeah, everybody have a good evening. So.
Good.